Hello everyone and welcome to the first video in our computer science concept series, where we will be starting with, as you can see here, computers and hardware. So much like with anything else, when you're starting to code, this means that you need to start by building a base foundation. In our case, we're going to be walking through different types of topics to do with computers and computer science. And this, as a coder, will allow you to have a greater understanding of the languages you are learning personally and of why the computer allows programs you write to run the way that they do. So take, for instance, software. We create software, and this could be something such as an application, but how does it run? And what allows our computers to switch on in the first place? Well, that's what we're about to find out, going under the hood and taking a look at what lurks underneath inside of our computers. So what do we know about computers? We know that inside of our towers, there are physical parts that connect together, which allow us to press the power button and have it turn on. These physical parts are what is known as the hardware, and without this hardware, nothing would run or work the way that it should. So let's break this down a little more. Now, each piece of our computer must work together, and each part has its own specific job that it needs to complete. So maybe you've just opened a Word document because you've got a last-minute essay to complete because you procrastinated. Or maybe you need to use a calculator-based application because you're short on time and need a quick answer to a mathematical equation. Regardless of what it is you're doing, the hardware comes together and allows you to move through a seamless environment and achieve the needed outcome, whilst each piece inside works together on a specific job. So these pieces all make up the major components of a computer and consist of this list that you can see right here. So we have the CPU, or the central processing unit. We have the main memory. We have secondary storage devices, input devices, and also output devices. So now let's look at each piece, starting with the CPU. So the job of the CPU is to run the programs or software that exist on the computer. And if you were to attempt to remove the CPU, the computer would lose its ability to run software altogether. In the past, as technology was evolving, processors weren't as small as the one that you see in this image. In fact, the first programmable computer, which is known as the ENIAC, had a processor that was 8 feet tall and 100 feet long. Imagine that, right? It's crazy to think about. But today, in our modern time, a CPU is also known as a microprocessor because of how small they are. And this definitely shows off just how much technology has transitioned over time, both in size and efficiency. Next up, we have the main memory. This is otherwise known as random access memory, or RAM, and the RAM has a super important job. That is, while you're running a program, whatever it may be, that program gets stored with the main memory of the computer. This also includes any data that program is holding also at that time. Again, we can look at this through the example of using something such as Word. Not only while Word is open does the RAM hold that program, but if you're writing something inside of Word, that content is also being stored on the RAM. The CPU also has the ability to access any of that data that is being stored. With RAM or main memory, this does not include things that we save onto our computer. And because it is used for a temporary storage, if you were to turn your computer off at any time, the information or memory being stored in that RAM is then going to be erased. The next piece of this component puzzle is the secondary storage devices, which, unlike memory, have the ability to hold and store data across long spans of time, even if you happen to cut off the power from your computer. A great example of a secondary storage device is a hard drive. This takes data and stores it by encoding it onto a circular disk. Other forms can consist of external disk drives, allowing the user to move data from one main computer to another. And although pretty much obsolete these days, there was also floppy disk drives, which have now been replaced by USB drives, two other forms of secondary storage devices. So lastly, we have our input and output devices. Input devices include keyboards, a mouse, scanners, and even something such as a microphone. These receive the input from the user of the specific device and send it to the computer. With our output devices, these are the opposite, in turn being any data that the computer creates for the user or the device. A way to think of this is by thinking of a printer, for example. Instead of us providing the computer with something, it formats a piece of information and then presents it back to us. For example, a printed out page of information. So looking at all those, that's it for our hardware that sits inside of our computer towers, working together to produce or receive what is needed in order to perform specific tasks. So in the next lecture or series video that I create for this, I'm going to begin by taking a look at binary, and I'm going to go over that briefly, and then after that, we're going to look at what exactly a program is. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel if you aren't yet. And if you have any suggestions for some episodes that you'd like to see in this series, simply leave a comment down below. I'll see you in the next video.